I've started the broadcast. I have tweeted the broadcast, and we're just going to give it a second to make sure that it's actually running okay before we begin the recording. Yep, it looks like everything is okay. Tuning into the chat. I think we're live. Yep, it looks live to me. Audio appears to be running okay. All right. Here we go. Jeff, is this a bad idea?
Yes.
Do you really think that? If so, I won't do it.
I think it is. I think it is kind of mean, but I can get behind the. I can get behind it if we really want to do it.
It's a fun meme. Come on, you guys watch It's Always Sunny, for God's sake.
I know.
It's all those people do to each other.
Okay.
Yeah, Dave. You know how you've always wanted to be like all the It's Always Sunny people.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean those people are universally beloved.
Yeah.
No one finds them annoying.
Longest running show on TV. What could go wrong? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll do it quick. Devendra, you have like half a second to get your reaction in there. Okay.
I'll get it in there.
Okay. Here we go.
We've talked about this so much.
All right. Here we go. I'm gonna start recording, and then I'm gonna give a countdown. Okay. So start recording now in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slash Filmcast. My name is David Chen, and I can't wait to finally watch the continued adventures of Natasha Romanoff in Avengers Endgame. Wait, what? Joining me today, I should say, is Devendra Hardawar.
I'm having second thoughts about my David Harbour Dad Goals blog, like especially after this movie.
Jeff Kanata.
This week I learned that my Russian accent is good enough for MCU.
And also friend of the show, Lindsey Romain.
Hi, I'm Lindsey Romain, and I am so happy to see Pew.
Wow.
That's my really bad.
Amazing.
Nailed it. All right. Welcome to the show, everyone. Of course, those are all references to the fact that today on the Slash Filmcast, later on for our main featured review, we're going to be reviewing Black Widow. Before that, we got some weekly plugs for you, as well as some what we've been watching. But we got to start with a pretty important and quite serious announcement. This is pretty big.
Okay.
And I want to talk about it with you all a little bit. And thanks to Lindsey for joining us as we announce this big thing that is going to impact all of us, which is that what you're listening to right now is the final episode of the Slash Filmcast.
What?
Because we're continuing the show under a different name called the Filmcast.
You dropped the slash.
We lost the slash.
We're losing the slash, everyone. And yes, there was a great deal of debate beforehand about how we exactly announced this news. But
and we picked the best possible way.
Oh yes, the
to
most
trick you into thinking we were ending the show.
The most compassionate way of announcing this change. Okay.
The most memorable way.
I would like to apologize for anyone who felt fear and sadness in that moment and saw 15 years of the Slash Filmcast flash before their eyes and ears.
I mean,
that's how I feel.
As many people as there were in that category, there were also a ton of people who jumped for joy thinking that this show would finally end.
Why are they listening?
Stop having to listen to it.
Why do they come just to boo us? I don't know. But it happens every week. Anyway, so this is actually a serious announcement. The Slash Filmcast is no more. We will be, from this point forward, a podcast called simply The Filmcast.
But there's no simply is not part of it. It's not simply the Filmcast.
It is the Filmcast, or just the Film. Can I say just?
No, it's not. There's no just.
There's
either.
no just. It's the Filmcast.
The Filmcast.
It's the name of the show is the Filmcast.
And in 10 more years, it'll just be Filmcast, and then in 10 more years, it'll just be cast.
Actually, I was going to say Ilmka would be the next thing after that.
The Ilmka.
The Ilmka. All right, so yeah, this is not a joke. This is real. And what
Perhaps you noted that the beginning of the show no longer said the Slash Film Cast, because
right.
that's not
It's a
what we are
remix.
anymore.
it said
Yeah.
it said the film cast,
Yeah.
like a space where the slash would have been. And so here's what's happening is we've been talking about this for a while with the folks at slashfilm.com, and let me just start by saying we love the folks at slashfilm.com. Like we are on
Absolutely.
great terms with them. And Huai Chen Bui was on the podcast just a couple weeks ago. I would expect her and others from slashfilm.com to be on the podcast in the future many times.
Yes.
We are on great terms with all of them, and we are so grateful for everything they've done. But I think a couple of things happen. We've been talking about like the futures of the podcast and the website, and it just started to make more sense to have the podcast be its own thing and do its own thing. And a huge part of that is our patrons over at patreon.com/film podcast who supported us and basically made at least me and probably you guys realize that like this thing can be an independently running operation, right? Like we can survive on our own. We can write our own future. And that's
We're not
really
just an extension of slashfilm.com. We have value in and of ourselves, guys.
Indeed. We are we can be the Filmcast on our own, and so that's really what this is about. And I just want to say that we've been hosting this podcast for almost 630 episodes.
Incredible.
Since I think 2008 was the first.
I
episode.
remember exactly where I was, Dave, when I think you called me and you were like, Peter Soretta is kind of interested in bringing us on because we were the Watchers podcast.
Yes.
And I was walking down the main street of Amherst, Massachusetts, because I was still living there in 2008. And I was just incredibly excited, because I love Peter. I love Slash Film, and being able to work with him, I think, was a great opportunity for us.
It's been one of the best, most rewarding experiences of my entire life. Like it's just been
the next year we went to Comic-Con.
Yeah.
I moved to New York, and the week after I moved to New York, we flew to Comic-Con.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
where we met Jeff Kanata, by the way,
for the first time.
That's me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we started the show with Adam Quigley. Eventually, Jeff Kanata took on third chair, and we've had awesome guests throughout the entire time, like Lindsey Romain, helping to support what we're doing here and add their opinions to the conversation in really meaningful ways. So it's been an incredible experience that we have gotten so much out of. And, the podcast has formed its own community. We have a Slack where people have met, formed relationships, gotten married because of their mutual enjoyment of the Slash Filmcast. There are podcasts and collaborations that exist today that would not exist if it weren't for the Slash Filmcast. So
That far surpass what we are doing, both in quality and listenership.
Quality, listenership, revenue, notoriety, meaningfulness to the cultural relevance. It's been so amazing to watch everyone surpass us in every single way.
It's been amazing and inevitable.
There's been absolutely no resentment or bitterness as a result of that.
That's just media. That's the life in media,
I'm really excited to be here. I don't know if I ever told you guys this, but I used to listen to you guys when I was in college, when I was in film school, before I ever, got to know any of you. I remember listening to you when I would walk on my way to film class. So being here feels very.
She always dreamed about being on the last episode that we do.
You thought to yourself, I will end
show when it ends.
I'll bring them down, and it will be the last thing I do.
Incredible. So
I think Devindra, the question on everyone's mind is what happens to #/tag? If we've dropped the slash.
It's a good question. We actually haven't talked about that. So, but that brings up a great point.
That could be our residual. That could just be the thing.
Yeah, I think #/tag cannot be defeated.
It's too good.
It's too good. So there's a few things that will remain, right? #/tag is one of them. The /filmcast@gmail.com email address will still function for probably a little while longer while we get the new email address up and running. But we are now at thefilmcast.com. The podcast icon in the podcast, like Apple Podcasts, and your podcast app will probably change. The name will change. So if you're looking for us, it's going to be the Filmcast, not the /Filmcast.
And not a Filmcast. The Filmcast.
The Filmcast. Not filmcast.com, not filmcast.com, thefilmcast.com. So
yeah.
So all those things will change.
But they don't have to do anything to keep getting episodes delivered to their podcast catcher of choice, right?
Absolutely correct. You know, I was just talking about things that are going to change. Here are some things that won't change, right? Is if you're already getting podcast episodes in your podcast feed, you should continue to get them. So don't worry. You don't need to resubscribe anywhere else. Like, it's going to be a seamless change. If you are subscribed to the Patreon, you will continue to get episodes in your Patreon app and on your Patreon private feeds. You don't need to change anything. It's really, and also you might ask, what's going to change about the show? Not that much for now.
That like half a second that it takes us to say slash, that's this time we'll save.
That's time we're giving back to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Free time.
In the, Jerry Seinfeld had this bit about when you get down to the end of the soap, right? Like, you have this tiny thin sliver of soap, and you can either throw it away, or you can do a Vulcan mind meld into the next soap.
It's the best
right?
part.
And if you do a Vulcan mind meld, you're basically saving that sliver of soap. And if you do that over the course of your life, you're saving like bars of soap.
Yeah, it's like sourdough starter. It'll live for years.
This is my father's mythos. It's also Theseus's soap at that point.
So true. So basically, imagine how much time we're going to save you over the course of the rest of the life of the show, however long that is.
Think of us as a tiny sliver of soap.
Think of this podcast's cultural relevance as the equivalent of a tiny piece of soap that is left over after you've done your washing.
Yeah. Some people might throw it away.
After you've had 500 showers. Right. But no, the podcast is going to stay the same. The format's going to stay the same. We're going to get guests whenever we can. So basically, most things will stay the same. It's just going to be, we have a new name. We're going to be operating on our own website and at
some other cool stuff.
thefilmcast.com.
Some other cool stuff, dude. We're getting a new logo.
Yep, new logo, and probably getting to merchandise pretty soon.
Can we hint at the other cool thing that we're getting that's new?
Maybe keep your ears open. How about that?
Yeah.
What are you referring to, Jeff?
The new theme song.
Oh yes, that's right. So you probably listened to our theme song today, and you're like, wow, they're really just going to keep it that way?
Yes.
I mean, Adam Warrock did an incredible job, and you can find his work at Bandcamp, by the way. When he wrote our
I love him. I love Eugene. He is not making music anymore.
Yeah.
But we are like a lasting vestige of his career. Is amazing.
I know, and he was a very talented guy. We will be using that temporary theme song until we get a new one. But we are in the process of getting a new one. We are extremely excited about the new one. It's
so exciting.
It's going to be pretty awesome.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty awesome.
You know, guys, I just thought of an incredible guest, which I think would be hilarious. Guess who from the Red Hot Chili Peppers?
I can't say.
Slash. He's gonna come on. He's gonna be like, I missed it.
You mean from Guns N' Roses?
Yeah, Guns N' Roses.
Sorry, from Guns N' Roses.
I was gonna say what?
You really
I'm thinking they did a mashup recently.
You really lost me there. You really lost me.
Yeah.
Like Flea?
That's what
Flea. Oh yes, Flea. That's who I was thinking of. But no, Slash and Guns N' Roses did something recently. Yeah.
Yeah. So
if they got together and made a show, it would be the Flea cast.
Wow.
Yes!
Jeff, this is
and then we could talk about Point Break. Yes.
I already deeply regret how this is going.
The Flea cast.
This is a completely ignominious beginning to the Filmcast. But so merch on the way, new theme song on the way. But the website URL is thefilmcast.com. On Twitter, we are at thefilmcastpod now. And so a lot of things are changing. A lot of stuff is staying the same, though, which is 3 of us are still going to be here. We'll still have awesome guests like Lindsey Romain on regularly. And we'll still have guests from /film.com on rather frequently as well. We are huge fans of each other and will continue to be fans of each other into the future. Absolutely no hard feelings. This just made the most sense from an editorial perspective, from a business perspective, and we are excited about the future. So
But no hard feelings if you want to stop listening to this and just listen to the /Flea class.
Well, you
I
can't
think
even say it.
we made
Couldn't even say it.
an incredible mashup podcast. Yeah,
Incredible.
incredible.
Yeah.
Also, we'll probably lose the people who just like really love the / part of our name.
They were
you
just
know?
here for the
It's like,
/ part.
Eyes
Yeah.
up here, guys. Eyes up here. It's the film cast. It's the film cast.
Yeah. So I guess in the remaining time we have in this opening segment, I just do want to reflect briefly on our time at /film.com as a /filmcast in a serious way, which is like, I think that we started this podcast around 13 years ago. I started working with Devindra about 14 years ago, and it at the time it was like a dream. It was like a dream to be able to work for one of these major film blogs. It was like
Dave, like our friendship started because we were reading all the film blogs, like Ain't It Cool, and I don't think Chud was around back then, but we read that when that became a thing.
Yeah. And so the early days, it was like, wow, I'm so dazzled by like the fact that we're even doing this, and then to be able to have people on the show, like Ryan Johnson, and I got to interview James Cameron at one point, and many other folks that like have stopped by on the show and shared about their work, has just been absolutely incredible. And it could not have happened if we were not a part of /film.com. Right? Like if it was just me and Devindra and Adam Quigley, hard limits to the people we could get on the podcast.
I would never have shown up.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff.
Who are these jokers?
Jeff barely wants to be on the podcast today. When we're part of /film.com. Like
I'm here mostly for the /.
He's here mostly for the /. So actually, huge negotiation to keep him on. FYI. So like just the fact that like people like us who were like basically nobodies, still are nobodies to a large degree, could be able to like chat with these people, right, who are making culture. It has been just absolutely incredible and gratifying, and we're so grateful to you, our listeners, for allowing that to happen. And we will continue to deliver interesting conversations to the best of our abilities in the days to come.
Yep.
So that's one thing I wanted to reflect on, is just like how much stuff has happened. I remember when we first started, Devindra was talking about how we were the Watchers podcast. And I remember at the time, we were hosted on a now defunct website called Mevio.com. And we
had USB, we had headsets, not microphones. And
I was recording the podcast on a Sound Blaster. And
is that true?
Yep, 100%.
The only way to reroute sound, Jeff. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And we were getting about 120 downloads an episode, which I was just like absolutely thrilled by, because I'm like, I don't even know 120 people, like in my life.
Yeah.
So the fact that we're getting 120 downloads means there's people I don't know who listen to the podcast.
There's like 10 more than we get now.
It's true that the podcast listenership has declined precipitously in the last few months. But yeah, so just getting 120, and then I remember when we moved to /film.com, our first episode was like 1,000 downloads. It's like, wow, this is incredible.
We've made it.
In the time since then, the podcast has been downloaded over 50 million times, and it's just like obviously there's a lot of people who find meaning in the show, more meaning frequently than we ourselves find in the show. I think on occasion it's for us, it's like, hey, we're showing up, we're talking about movies, and like some people have written in and said like it's a profound experience for them to listen to the show, and we are just really grateful that has been able to be the case, and we want to continue for that. We want that to continue as long as we can make it
another
continue.
50 million.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
As quickly as possible. Also,
within a year, please. Yeah.
Also, dollars, not listeners, by the way.
Yes.
I just want that to make Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, speaking of which, you already mentioned it, but it bears repeating how much the Patreon has meant to this show over the last year, or however long it's been, less than a year. It has been such a huge boon to our lives and to, I think, the quality of the show and the things we've been able to do. And we are so grateful to all the folks that have been listening to us for a long time, a short time, but are willing to step up and show their support in a material way. It really is amazing, and we're super grateful for it.
It's fantastic. Like now I can tell my wife when I need to watch the Tomorrow War.
Yeah,
I gotta do this for the thing. We're making money
for this
on the Patreon.
this money-making enterprise that is now a significant part of our lives and
This
income.
machine will never
people
end.
are actually paying me to do this, honey. It's not. I don't want to.
What?
Yeah.
What you say? What's that you say? This is a waste of my time and my family's time? No, I defy that
The
statement.
Tomorrow War is putting food on the table. Okay.
Speaking of which, for the After Dark today, we're going to be diving into spoilers for the Tomorrow War. So that's what you got in store for patrons over at patreon.com/filmpodcast. That is the After Dark episode today. But yeah, that is the announcement of what is going on. Some stuff is going to change. A lot of stuff's going to stay the same. We're still going to be here. We hope you will still be here. And I think it's going to be fun. So thanks, everyone. And yeah, it's...
Long live the Filmcast.
Long live the Filmcast at thefilmcast.com. All right, folks. Let's get to what we have been watching this week. Lindsey Romain. Tell us about
amazingly patient for as we
yes.
Thank you, Lindsey.
as we go up our own butts right now. You know, talking.
Lindsey, what have you been watching this week?
Yeah, so this week I've been watching Fear Street Part 2, 1978, which is a mouthful of a title. But yeah, I mean, I watched the first one when it came out. Also, I actually reviewed it for Nerdist, and I've been following along with the series, the film trilogy, I guess, as it comes out. And yeah, the latest one just came out on Friday. It's set in 1978. The first one was set in the 90s. And yeah, I've been enjoying this film trilogy. I don't know that I like super duper love it, but I've been having fun with it. It's a good like summer slasher series. I'm enjoying that Netflix is experimenting a little bit with release schedules and how they're sort of putting this out there. Yeah, I share some of the criticisms that I've seen with other people who find the needle drops a little bit annoying.
So many needle drops.
so many. I thought maybe the first one had kind of overdone it and then it would just be smooth sailing. But then the second one was like, oh no, we're going to put every 70s song you've ever heard.
I think we're really all wondering, what is 1666 going to be? Like, what are the needle drops there?
I know it's going to be like old.
Is it going to be all classical?
Maybe it'll be like the Westworld thing where it's like covers of, you know,
yes.
I don't know, Nirvana or something. But yeah, no, it's been fun. I don't know that it really evokes like Fear Street, the books, all that well to me. Like it's a fun slasher horror thing, but like Fear Street books were pretty PG from my recollection. And
they were only like slightly more like mature than Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Not really much more.
Yeah, like I feel like I remember in like 7th grade I read Goosebumps, and in 8th grade I read Fear Street. So yeah, it's just kind of a step up, but the movies are so far very brutal and very, you know, sexual and stuff, and
surprisingly brutal at times. I think I watched the first one. I have not seen the second one yet, but I loved how I was surprised and shocked by many elements of that first movie, and it pretty much got me all in on this trilogy.
Yeah, it's pretty gnarly. The first one has one of the gnarliest kills I feel like I've seen in a horror movie in a long time, which kind of came out of nowhere. And you know, the second one's got some pretty good gore too. Yeah, I think the only thing that's sort of holding me back from being like super duper into it is that I find, first of all, I think so far each one has been a little long. I think that they would be better at maybe like an hour and 20 minutes versus I think they've both been almost a full 2 hours. And then I think one of my other slight criticisms is I don't know if the mythology at the center of it is all that compelling to me. There's sort of a central plot following this Sarah Fear character who's
a big bad witch.
Yeah, who's a big bad witch, and kind of that ties all the films together. And so far I find that to be one of the weakest parts of it, but maybe it'll all come together in 1666, which is the third one that comes out this week. So yeah, we'll see, but I've been digging it. It's a fun kind of summer slasher time at home, not at the movies, but yeah, I've been liking it.
Here's my question: is these movies are coming out like one after another each week? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like at this point, it feels like the difference between a movie and a TV episode is like
that's what I talked about
right?
last week.
Yeah. Like, so do you feel like the production values are, I don't know. I mean, there's also extremely expensive TV shows as well, right?
It's very different, right? Like
Yeah.
here's the thing, like it's completely different sets, completely different actors. So the thing about a TV show is that you can reuse a lot of stuff, right?
Right,
And
but
this is like-
what separates this from like an anthology TV show?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Not
like
much.
it's not much, right? Yeah.
Not
So
much.
Yeah.
fascinating. But anyway, the Fear Street trilogy is airing each week right now on Netflix.
These were supposed to be in theaters, by the way. Like the original
Yeah.
plan was like I think one a month over a summer at one point.
Right.
Yeah.
I've actually been wondering too. I think I mentioned this in my review of the first part. I wonder if it is Netflix sort of testing the weekly release model and using these movies as a sort of test for that, just because it seems to create more of a conversation. I don't know that that's true, but that's just been something, that I've wondered as I've been watching it. Yeah.
Give me more weekly releases. I love it.
Yeah.
Lindsey, Romain, what else have you been watching this week?
I also had a chance to check out the new Gossip Girl TV show, which is on HBO Max. I was not actually, I love teen shows, even now that I'm in my 30s. I still like watch Riverdale and stuff. But I was not somebody who ever watched the original Gossip Girl. I did read the books, I think, when I was younger. But so I don't have a ton of familiarity with this other than just sort of what I've picked up through the zeitgeist. So I kind of went in with not too many expectations, except for I heard that there was some kind of twist to, the original format of how things went. And yeah, I don't know that I loved the pilot, but I'm definitely intrigued. I remember that, or from what I saw online, even not on Twitter, I do pick up some things here and there, but I did see that there was some sort of controversy that the embargo for this one wouldn't let people talk about the plot literally, like, at all, which actually kind of got me intrigued. So yeah, there's an interesting twist on the original format if you watched it, and yeah, I think
Can you just like frame what is Gossip Girl?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
What is the context
What is
of it?
this
Because
thing?
I know there is like there's a person who seems to know things, and the secret of the show was like who that person was. Right?
She might
Until the
pass
end of the
on this
series.
thing in the form of gossip.
Right.
She may be a
Right.
girl, is what I've been told.
Exactly. Many girls apparently.
Maybe
Yeah.
not. If you've seen the original, maybe not. But it's sort of it's set in this like prep school in New York City, the original and the new version. In the original one, it was these sort of very extravagant, mean teens and these sort of cliques who were just constantly going at one another. And the premise sort of was that someone was anonymously watching them and posting sort of gossip, like blind items about them online. And that was Gossip Girl. In this new one, I will not spoil it, but that sort of flipped a little bit. There's a little bit more to the framing and everything.
That was like pre-social media too, right? So it's like
yeah,
very different now.
Yeah, but it's definitely pre like Twitter and such being really huge. And so yeah, the new one exists. It's a sequel to the original. So it's, those characters still exist in this world. They're not actual, like, it's not Blake Lively coming back, but it's they're still characters that exist. And so yeah, it's set like about a decade later. And yeah, it really utilizes the social media, the Instagram. There's a lot of sort of funny quips and stuff, a lot of like pop culture references, maybe a little too much. I feel like it's leaning on that so far, but yeah, it's an interesting premise. It's a little clunky in terms of some of the writing, but I think I'm going to stick with it. There's only one episode out so far. Sort of the most upsetting thing for me is that the teacher characters are sort of big characters in this version. And I Googled some of them and I am older than most of them, which that's
never Google.
Yeah, no, Tavi Gevinson, who started as a fashion blogger and has become an actress. She plays one of the teachers and she's like, 27 or something. Yeah, it's
I spend a lot of time on TikTok now. And I saw a TikTok recently that was like remember when we were growing up and how people would talk about the 60s? That's basically what people think of the 90s now.
The 90s I can understand. I see kids doing this about the 2000s and I'm like, my God.
I saw a TikTok today about Y2K fashion, which is not a thing I knew existed.
Oh, yeah.
There's no such thing as Y2K fashion.
Yeah.
I guess it's like blue shell IMAX.
Exactly.
Right,
it is it's vaporwave fashion. Basically,
Right.
I just had the fun experience of describing vaporwave to Leo Laporte, and that was a huge generational shock to him. It's amazing.
Well, I read a tweet. Somebody said that we are at this moment as far away from 1990 as that 70s show was away from 1970 when it
And the
premiered.
same, like it was the same with like the Wonder Years too.
Yeah.
Like that difference keeps happening.
Yeah.
Before we leave this topic, Lindsay, did you watch Euphoria? And how does
Yes.
Gossip Girl compare to Euphoria? Because I love that show just
Yeah.
because it's so big and operatic, and I don't think Gossip Girl is really doing that.
No, I would say Gossip Girl falls a little bit more into the sort of CW type show, maybe a little elevated because it's on HBO, so they can like swear and stuff. But no, it's nothing like Euphoria. I love Euphoria. It's one of my very favorite shows. That one is definitely operating on a different level.
Yeah. Everybody watch Euphoria. Do not judge Sam Levinson entirely on what was the movie? The Marie movie.
Malcolm and Marie.
Yeah. That was him at his worst. Euphoria is him at his best.
Yeah, Euphoria is amazing. I've written about that one quite a bit too. It's a very, very beautiful show. But that one's not teen show, maybe the way that you would think when you think of that.
It's the teen show that every parent watches and just like, how do I keep my kid from experiencing any of this? Because it's horrifying.
Right. Yeah. There's a little bit of that with Gossip Girl. And that's how I know I'm getting old, is that I'm like worried for the teens and, yeah. But yeah, I think I'll keep checking it out. It's got an interesting premise and some of the dialogue is a little overdone, but still kind of fun. So I think it has room to grow and I'm going to keep checking it out.
All right. That's the Gossip Girl reboot. And it's on HBO Max right now. That's what Lindsey Romain's been watching. Jeff Kanata, hit us with what you've been watching.
Well, I did get a chance to watch all of season 2 of I Think You Should Leave.
Same.
Yes.
Same. Yep.
Yeah.
And I watched it in one sitting.
Wow.
Not a huge accomplishment. 15-minute episodes, only 6 of them, but still didn't want to turn it off because it's friggin' hilarious. It's so good. It's so funny. There is my only tiny criticism is that there are a number of sketches, too many in my opinion, that rely on just shouting as being the funny thing.
That's like why they're shouting and the reaction of everybody else, which is what gets me.
Mostly the show has great, clever, funny ideas, but every now and again there's a sketch where it's the idea is just I'm shouting now, and that's my only tiny critique. But well worth watching. So funny. And the thing I love most about this show is that it uses its budget really smartly. And I'll give a slightly spoilery example. So if you don't want to be spoiled for anything from I Think You Should Leave season 2, skip forward 20. I Think You Should Leave for 20 seconds.
Perhaps you should leave, yes.
But there is a sketch in the very first episode that is one of my favorite sketches of the entire show called Coffin Flop. I hurt myself laughing. And the premise is that there was a reality show of just watching when coffins fail and corpses flop out of them.
Yeah, like coffins fall apart and then the corpses fall out.
Yeah, the bottom falls out, falls out of a coffin and naked bodies flop out, real dead bodies. So the premise is that this was a reality show that didn't do well or was sued.
No, it was doing well.
Yeah, whatever. The point is that that's a funny premise. Like that's already funny, and they show you a clip from it of a corpse falling out of a coffin, and it's very funny.
Yep.
And then they show you 24 more times.
Yes.
And
they're all
everyone is different. Everyone is a different coffin, a different corpse, a different place, a different group of extras that are hoisting they set up and shot 24 instances of this, which is a massive expense for a comedy sketch show. And they're just for these like 3-second clips to punctuate the gag. But the number of them, it gets funnier and funnier and funnier because they keep showing, and it's not showing the same clip over, it's showing a different one and a different one and a different one. And the fact that they just knowing that they did this that many times makes it so much funnier, in my opinion.
I would agree completely. And a great call. I was amazed at how many of those, because they didn't have to do it that many times.
It keeps going. You just they kept doing this. And I mean, it's very conscious. Like that's the gag at a certain point is like, look how many times we did this.
I think that's a sign of just how dense this show is too. Like, the episodes are super short. The season is super short, but I'm already on my 3rd rewatch. Like this is how this thing becomes meme material because the coffin flap thing, like, and the framing of it's one of those messages of, somebody saying this network is trying to take away your TV shows from your cable provider. It's one of those that gets increasingly more insane too. So it's like, man, their 1-2 punches of what makes those things funny is just phenomenal this season.
And there's sketch after sketch after sketch that's memorable and clever and smart and funny. So I think you should leave season 2. I will, agree with everybody here and say, if you're looking for something funny, you could do a lot worse.
Also,
I think there's go ahead.
So at vulture.com there was a profile of Tim Robinson, and the title of the profile is "Tim Robinson is sorry for yelling," which I thought kind of speaks to that. And like one of the directors of the show says, quote, "We didn't realize until shooting the first season that if Tim is making a big scene in front of a crowd and we don't show them responding, then he just feels so bad yelling at people." And he said they figured out that what Robinson needs to feel better is scenes of the crowd reacting, to see both the hot dog guy and the people around him groaning in disbelief. He needs the push and pull between the transgressor and the onlookers. When you can see that tension, says Cannon, he's like, this is okay. I'm not just yelling at these people who have to stand here and take it. I'm actually the one in trouble, end quote. So anyway, that's just some of his kind of like rationale around it. But yeah, go ahead.
That experience is also like reflected in a sketch this season too, I think. Like the mall one.
Yeah.
It feels like exactly that.
That one, that might be my favorite sketch in the entire season. It is so fucking funny. The way he, like, I don't even want to spoil a second of it, but it's a take on these like, shows, undercover boss type shows, and it is so fun. Like I was like, my wife thought she was like, "Are you breathing? You can't breathe." And I was like, "I can't. You're so funny." And I was on the floor, like holding my side. It mounts and it mounts and it mounts and oh god,
it's genius. I want to shout out, like we can dive deeper into what makes the season work, but I do love there is like a distinct element of sadness within so many of these characters where it's like, they're shouting. It's usually Tim Robinson shouting, but it's usually because he's just playing a toddler. He's a toddler in an adult man's body. Right. And if you ever deal with a toddler, especially like I'm thinking of like the burger stealing one, it's dealing with adults who act like immature toddlers and also often feel bad about it because they know they cannot fit into a functional society, so they're outcasts. Like the framing of so many of these is just like they just want to be normal, but they can't because they're broken inside.
That burger stealing one too is I like had that experience. So like, I wish I'd ordered that. Wish I'd ordered that one. It's so fun.
And some of them are so like they're relatable, right? Like we all have had that.
Yeah. Well, that's I think you should leave season 2 on Netflix right now. Jeff Canada, what else are you watching?
I checked out a movie that it seems so weirdly made for me.
A video game movie. Yeah.
Not just any video game movie, Devindra. A movie based on an obscure VR game from 2016.
Yeah, I barely remember this VR game.
I remember it well. I visited Red Storm, the developer in North Carolina in 2015 to see it. Yes. And was
so what
blown
you're saying
away.
is you should have been in this movie, Jeff.
I wish. Wish.
Oh my
Werewolves
God,
Within the VR video game, very good. Can't imagine it sold enough copies to justify a film version, but here we are. There's a film version. It's so weird that the way IP works in Hollywood, like it does. As long as it was something else, it kind of doesn't even matter what the something else was.
Yep.
Somebody's like, okay, well, it's not. I'm not betting on nothing. At least someone has heard of this somewhere.
I think the best example of this is like the guys who made Skyline like made a comic book version of it before they made the film, so that they could get financing for the film because it was based on a comic book.
People in Hollywood have so little courage that they just need to know that it was something. It was something.
It was something.
I'm not the person who's betting on it. Somebody else bet on it before me.
Right.
And now I can give you money to make the thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I loved the video game. It is basically a VR version of a very common tabletop party game called One Night Ultimate Werewolf. Some people have played Mafia or Werewolf, or One Night Ultimate Werewolf is a very particular kind of werewolf, but it's basically a game where you're sitting around with a bunch of friends and you all close your eyes and you pick a card and you're either a villager or you're a werewolf. And then you try to, all the villagers try to figure out who the werewolf is, and the werewolf tries to remain undetected. And then you go to bed and the werewolf can kill can kill somebody, right? The villagers get to decide who they're going to kill. And if they kill the werewolf, they vote to kill the werewolf, then they win. And so it's a party deduction social game where you're just talking amongst each other, and it's a game about lying to your friends, basically. So no story, there's no narrative, there's nothing upon which to hang a film script. And yet, here we are seeing a film version of Werewolves Within that is one of my favorite movies of the year.
Nice.
This is great. Great fun. I am so glad I gave this movie an hour and 36 minutes of my time, and I urge everybody to do so. One of my favorite movies of all time is Clue, the movie. This has such Clue DNA vibes. It is like doing a new version of Clue. It is a bunch of people in a house. Somebody starts dying, and we got to figure out what's going on. And to their credit, that's like the game, right? You got to figure out who's the werewolf. But this script is so much smarter than it has any right to be, being based on a video game with no plot. It's so clever. It's so funny. I'll give you an insight into the tone of this movie. It starts. The very, very first thing you see when this movie starts, like a lot of movies, especially horror movies, it has a quote that comes up on the screen in text. And it's got this ominous music. And it's like, Jordan, Jordan. And the quote comes up one line at a time. Jordan, Jordan. And it shows you the quote, Jordan, Jordan. And you feel like, oh, this is a horror movie. It's about werewolves. Jordan, Jordan here, and the text slowly fades in, and it's white text against black, and it's so. And then the last line is the quote is by Mr. Rogers, and that's the tone of this movie. It's like it is so in on the joke, and it's having so much fun. Sam Richardson plays the lead, and he's great. This dude is in like everything right now. And he is
in the Tomorrow War. Richard Splett in Veep is probably where a lot of people know him from. Very talented guy. Yeah,
a star. He's so charming, so
and
great.
I Think You Should Leave. Like, in so many things.
Yeah, he's in I Think You Should Leave. That's right.
Yeah.
And Milana Weintraub, you know who she is, right? I butchered that, but he and she have such great chemistry in it. But it's full of great actors that you recognize from other stuff. Crashing, the like, you guys remember, did you guys watch that show on
the
HBO?
Pete Holmes, that one?
Yeah. The guy that like gets with his ex-wife and is just super nice to him all the time is in this. There's just a lot of really great Guillermo from What We Do in the Shadows TV
I'm
show.
sold. Yeah,
is in this.
This is from the director Scare Me too, so it's like this guy's been on a roll. Yeah,
the movie that I totally went gaga for recently as well. This is clever. It's funny. It's got something to say. Like, it actually has commentary about the world, and it becomes like this thing is, it's you're constantly trying to figure it out yourself and going, are werewolves real in this movie? Or are they not? Like, it's a great mystery. Super funny, super fun, very clever, smartly written, great dialogue. I would be shocked if it's not in my top 10 of the year. I love Werewolves Within. Yeah,
I've heard it's great. Yeah, and the movie is Werewolves Within, and it's available for rent right now, right? I assume that's how you watch it.
Yeah, it was $6 on Amazon is how I saw it. Yeah,
awesome. Again, Werewolves Within. I'm looking forward to checking this one out, Jeff.
Yeah, I think you'll like it, man. It's tons of fun. Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to what Devindra Hardawar has been watching this week. Devindra, hit us.
I want to just quickly talk about The White Lotus, which is the new Mike White show that's on HBO. it's been about 10 years since his last show on HBO was canceled far too soon, Enlightened. So this is him coming back at it. And I don't know about you guys, but I really like Mike White. I like things he writes. He's been doing movies. He did Brad's Status, which I haven't seen, and he wrote Pitch Perfect 3 and Beatrice at the Dinner. So he's had like a couple movies going on the last decade. This was a pandemic project, apparently, where HBO contacted him and was just like, we gotta have something for the schedule. And he came up with this idea because apparently he spends like half a year on Hawaii as like his writer's retreat place. He came up with the idea of just setting a show in a single place, and that is a fancy resort in Hawaii called the White Lotus. And the show is about VIP people who go there to be treated very nicely, and it's about the staff and how they react to them. It's really about that inequality, right? That tension between the usually wealthy people who go to these resorts and often act like babies or act like immature adults, and how the staff has to deal with them and also treat them like babies and children, and just like try to keep everything in balance. And that is the show so far. It is kind of a comedy, but I also think it's more of a dramedy, I guess. In true HBO fashion, this series does open up with a dead body, and we don't know who that dead body belongs to. So it's almost like they're trying to do a bit of the like little white lies thing too. But yeah, it's with Mike White's vision. And I think he does a great job of writing very human characters, often very flawed characters, but people who have either skewed worldviews, and you get to like zone in on like what makes them tick a little. I've only seen one episode of this so far, but I think I'm going to keep watching. It's only going to be 6 episodes. It's got a great cast. Connie Britton's in this. Steve Zahn, who plays her husband, Jennifer Coolidge, Alexandra Daddario. Generally all, wealthy people, but in different ways. Like Connie Britton is this tech executive, marketing executive, I believe. And Steve Zahn is her husband, who's worried he has cancer of some kind. And there are some mean teens here too, so I think you'll enjoy that, Lindsey.
Yeah, this whole thing sounds deeply up my alley.
It is very much like watching people go to this island just kind of lose themselves. Like they can't tell what day of the week it is anymore. They just like kind of it is like you see how people just get very petty in these situations. I've never been to a resort like this. I've not been to Hawaii, but from what I gather, this feels very realistic. I guess like I did like one like hotel thing for my honeymoon, but it was certainly not this elaborate. But yeah, it's a beautiful show, great cast. And I think I'm really interested in where it's going because it's Mike White, and I can trust him. So if you like any of these people, I'd highly recommend checking it out. Also, if you want to see another one of the internet's favorite boyfriends, Jake Lacey, who typically plays nice guys, he plays an utter asshole in this show.
Oh,
it's
nice.
kind of fun to watch him be the bad guy for once, or at least a just kind of a prick. I don't know if necessarily he's a bad guy, but he's not nice. So yeah, I'm enjoying it, and yeah, good job HBO planning ways to fill their programming gaps, right? Because it always seems like there's something to watch every couple of weeks once a show ends. So yeah. Good for them.
Yeah, that one flew under my radar, but I'm a huge Enlightened fan, so I need to check this out. Yeah.
Yep.
I was reading Willa Paskin's review of this at Slate.com. She was not as much of a fan of you, Devindra, as you were.
It's kind of mixed.
She writes, The White Lotus Paradise is a dead end for HBO. Maybe that's enough shows about soulless, wealthy white people for now. And she lists like Succession, Big Little Lies, The Undoing, Gossip Girl,
absolutely.
and Made for Love.
I agree.
As all being shows about extremely rich white people who are terrible, and that maybe the genre is a little bit oversaturated. So I'm curious to see if a show like this can add something to the conversation.
You don't always get to see the people who are like having to deal with their demands, I think. So I've only seen one episode. This show goes into like, the people who serve all these rich people are usually natives of Hawaii, people who are not making nearly as much money. So there's a huge disparity there. I think the comedy is in like seeing how these people treat the help, basically, and we do get some perspectives from the people who are actually servicing them. So yeah, I don't know, I've only seen an episode. I'm intrigued. I don't think it's the greatest thing in the world so far, but it's Mike White. Like, I give him a shot. I give him a couple episodes to get going.
All right, it's The White Lotus. It's on HBO Max right now.
I tell you what, I'm excited that Succession season 3 is coming.
Yes,
right
yeah,
I
that
know.
teaser.
Succession
man.
season 3 teaser was released this week. And Jeff, do you watch teasers?
No, but I'm
No.
super excited about the
You're
date.
feeling the energy, Jeff.
Yeah,
Like the
I mean,
disturbance in the forest as we watch that
There's
teaser.
a date.
I know.
There's a date?
Is there a date? I don't think so, Jeff.
I think
No,
they
it's just
said.
like later this fall.
They said this fall. So
Oh,
it's
I
not.
thought it was it's in September.
If you can find the date, great. But I don't think there was a date.
I'm probably wrong.
I watched that trailer like 6 times.
I
in a
know.
row.
Me,
I was
same
so
thing.
excited.
I sent it to a few people, and like everyone watched it.
It
They're
made
like,
me feel things in
Yeah.
certain ways. Yeah.
everyone's like, this makes me so happy.
I know.
So
missed
Yeah.
them.
yeah,
That's a great
I
show.
agree. I agree. So anyway, let's talk about what I've been watching this week. I want to just mention a couple things. First of all, I don't know if you guys use Amazon. I use Amazon.com. It's a online e-commerce
I've heard of
website.
it. Yeah.
What?
And they have this thing.
I thought it was the place where they make spaceships
Mm.
to send billionaires into space.
They have this thing called Amazon Day where you can order packages throughout the week and they all show up on one day, so you don't need to like deal with like, you know, it's like saves on packaging. You get them all in one box. And sometimes I'll just like order a bunch of stuff and I won't even remember that I ordered it. Like I'll, you know, I don't know if you guys ever order things like late at night or early in the morning.
Yeah.
You know,
The regret orders.
the regret. You know, I don't know about regret, but I'm just like, I'm ordering things that I wouldn't if I had my full faculties.
Just a capitalism orgy.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. And I happened to order like a bunch of Criterion Blu-rays this week. Like I honestly didn't even remember that I ordered them until they showed up. And one of them was 3 films with Andre Gregory and Wallace Shawn. The
Yes.
Criterion disc, one of which is My Dinner with Andre. Now I had,
Which is my favorite movie of all time, Dave.
Yeah.
You know that, right?
I am aware of that. I actually wrote a review about this movie on Letterboxd, and somebody commented, "This is Jeff Kanata's favorite movie of all time." So I was reminded of this fact. And I had never watched the whole movie the whole way through. I'd watched like portions of it. I watched parodies of it. You know, I'd never watched the whole thing. So I decided to sit down and watch the whole thing. And I quite enjoyed it. It is basically the OG 2-hour rambling film podcast.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if people wanted to make this thing today, it would be like, oh, just make a film podcast. they wouldn't. My Dinner with Andre would not exist if they tried to make it today. But
Except, you know how it was made, right?
yes, well, first of all, let me just say,
written and rehearsed, and it was not. It's not a podcast.
no, yeah. I mean, one of my favorite things about ordering a physical Criterion copy is watching a movie on Blu-ray in what you know is the best quality possible at this point in time, and then sitting and reading the like little essay in the booklet, you know, afterwards. Like they always get like great people to write those essays, and it's just a lovely experience. You know, it tells you about like how they made the film and like all the cultural significance of the film and all this stuff. And yeah, I mean, apparently they Wallace Shawn, I think, like recorded a bunch of conversations they had and then kind of transcribed it into a like put it into a script structure. And then it had like framed it with this dinner bookend.
And then they did it over and over and over and over. It's like it's crazy that what they did to make it. It's wild.
I quite enjoyed the movie. I think like it's a very interesting movie because of there's 2 things that are interesting about the movie, right? One is the actual stuff that is being said by the 2 characters, which is very thought-provoking. And then there is how that stuff impacts the relationship between the characters and how it impacts like the way in which they interact with each other. And I have a little bit more to say about that, but Jeff, I'll turn it over to you for a minute or two if you want to share like why this is your favorite movie of all time.
I mean, I have seen this movie many, many times, and I always get something else out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is about all the things that I care most about. It is about art and creation and living and what our purpose is and how to feel about the world and how to place yourself in it. And for many, many years when I watched it, in my younger days, I related to the Wallace Shawn character, and I saw the conversation through the Wallace Shawn character's eyes. And then at a certain point when I got older and watched it, I started relating more with the Andre Gregory character and understanding his sort of older perspective on, and it really is this clash of like a young artist and an older artist and their two approaches to living and life. And Andre Gregory's description of the sort of experimentation he did in the name of creativity is so captivating and romantic. I love the conversation. I love the content. I love the fact that the movie only interacts with you on its own terms, right? It's not going to make any concessions to you, which is very hallmark of Wallace Shawn's entire writing career. Like all his stuff is very, very almost hard to. It doesn't care about the viewer at all. It is very true to itself. Yeah, and for a long time I had the DVD of this, which was discontinued, and for a while it was like worth over $100, and I was like, oh wow, I got this like rare thing. And then Criterion came out with that, and it's just kind of like, well, no one wants the DVD anymore. Yeah, and I have the Criterion of this as well. But is this 3-pack, like, is it a different? Does it have more stuff?
No, I think it's the same. It's the same disc, yeah. But
it comes with Uncle Vanya and something else, right?
Yeah. Let's see.
Have you watched Uncle Vanya?
I have not.
Oh, dude, it's awesome. It's awesome.
I'm looking forward to checking it out.
Dude,
my Dinner with Andre, Vanya on 42nd Street, and A Master Builder. Those are the 3 films that are on the site.
Vanya on 42nd Street. Pardon me for saying the wrong title. Vanya on 42nd Street is a production of Uncle Vanya and the people doing a production of Uncle Vanya at the same time. It's fucking brilliant. It's so good.
Well, I got a lot out of it too, and I think that the thing that really struck me as I was watching the movie this time around was about like what does it mean to truly live, right? Like the example he gave that was very vivid was like he talks about this dude, I don't remember if he was like a Tibetan monk or a scholar or whatever, who tries to, if he's right-handed, he tries to use his left hand to do everything.
Yeah.
And the idea being that like so many of us like kind of enter this kind of trance-like state where we go through our lives and our routines unthinkingly.
You just accept what is presented to you,
right? And we don't experience anything. Like when we eat food, we're not sitting there and thinking about the food and tasting it. For instance, we're just eating the food for sustenance. And I just feel like a lot of the stuff in the movie, you know, it's 2 old dudes kind of complaining about things. And so on the one hand, there's always going to be like people like that who are like, there's no country for old men anymore. You know, like that's always going to be true. But on the other hand, I felt like a lot of what they said is extremely relevant for our lives today. And in particular, coming out of this pandemic, you know, if we're lucky enough to be in an area that's coming out of the pandemic, it's very striking how what they're talking about applies to what our lives have been like over the course of the last couple of years, when many of us have felt like time has moved in an extremely weird way and it's hard to break out of our routines. So I found a lot of the movie to be strikingly relevant, and I don't think it's for everyone. I don't think this is a movie that's for everyone. And I'm just going to say, to be brutally honest, it was difficult for me to focus on the movie. Like I actually had to challenge myself. I was like, I'm going to put down the phone and I'm just going to like stare at the TV screen, and you're just staring at a guy talking for for much of the first like 20 minutes. It's just one guy just talking to his friend, almost monologue like. Yeah. And it was difficult. It was difficult, but it was rewarding, and I still ultimately recommend the film. So the movie, and basically I'm saying TV and the internet and TikTok and YouTube have rotted my brain, is what I'm trying to say. Which is also part of the message of the movie. So
it's so it was what, 1981, I believe it was made, or it was released 80 or 81.
Yes, so 81.
Predates all of that stuff, and I think even at that time was challenging for a lot of viewers. But yeah, I mean, I adore it, and I'm super glad that you sat down and finally watched the whole thing and got something out of it.
Yeah. I'm glad you enjoy it. It's my Dinner with Andre. It's in the Criterion Collection. In the Slash Filmcast After Dark last week, we talked about Jackie Chan movies, and I decided, you know what? I'm going to go revisit a bunch of Jackie Chan movies, and in doing so, I discovered shockingly few Jackie Chan movies are available to stream online. That are widely regarded as some of his best movies.
Is the number 3 movie of all time, The Tuxedo, available?
Number 2, according to a previous list that was on the internet. But I think The Tuxedo is available, Jeffrey. So that one is safe.
There you go. That's all you need. Number 2.
That's all you need. So I actually purchased a Blu-ray of Mr. Nice Guy, which you can stream, but the Blu-ray is the original director's cut that I think Warner Brothers Archive put out. Warner Brothers basically happened into a lot of rights. They're also behind the Drunken Master 2 Blu-ray that Devindra recently purchased for me. And these are great Blu-rays. Like, these are like extremely, like, shockingly high quality Blu-rays in terms of video quality, and the fact that they basically have the original version of this film and not the American version that was the American edit. And so Mr. Nice Guy is not a very good movie. Let me just put that out there. The acting is terrible. The plot is ludicrous. The script is bad. I mean, Jackie Chan plays a TV chef, and he gets embroiled in this gang war. As you do. And there is absolutely no explanation for why he can do martial arts. Like, there's no...
Because he's Jackie Chan,
They do not explain, like, oh, he used to be ex-special forces or whatever. He just happens to be able to fight people, like, en masse. And so the movie is awful. However, in terms of
fight scenes,
the stunts and the fight scenes are top-tier Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
So these are some of the best Jackie Chan fight scenes and stunts ever. And I think it takes place in Sydney, if I recall correctly, and it makes great use of that environment. So it's really enjoyable. Again, the movie is Mr. Nice Guy. You can actually stream this one. I'd recommend the Blu-ray, which is apparently made from a 4K scan of the movie.
Is that the one where he slides down that really steep building at the? Or am I mixing that up?
He slides down extremely steep stuff in the movie. I don't know if it was a building.
Okay.
But there's some really incredible sequences I'd actually recommend it. The other thing I recommend is there is a movie that actually, like, this actually does make me kind of mad. It's called Miracles. It came out in the U.S. as Miracles, a.k.a. Black Dragons, I think is the new title. And so I bought the DVD on Amazon, and the DVD showed up, and it's fine, but the transfer looks like complete garbage. It looks terrible. And in order to see it in high quality, there's actually a Region 2, like in the UK, you can get it. It's called Miracles, the Canton Godfather. And you can watch scenes that have been ripped online from Miracles, the Canton Godfather Blu-ray, which apparently looks incredible. But the Miracles DVD in the US looks terrible. However, it has some of the best Jackie Chan action scenes ever made. So that's another movie I watched recently, and I've
never seen that movie, but I've always seen clips of it, and everything looks.
It's like the action scenes are just next level good. They are so good. And so anyway, I just want, like, it reinforces to me the fact that, like, we need to, like, there's importance in owning physical media, especially for some of these obscure movies, because if you don't own the physical media, like, they may, like, you can't stream this movie anymore, right? You cannot stream Miracles anywhere right now in high quality. And so I'm kind of just like amassing like all these John Woo and Jackie Chan movies as rapidly as possible. Because it's like you never know when you're never going to be able to watch them again.
But it's not as simple as just getting the physical media, because there's stuff popping up on digital. I was talking with folks on this about this on Twitter. There's a 4K cut of A Better Tomorrow that is on iTunes. And it has the original sound, like it has enhanced sound effects, but it has the original soundtrack. And the soundtrack has been like the problem in DVD releases and stuff.
Yeah.
I think at one point I had a DVD that had like the soundtrack from Speed against The Better Tomorrow, and it was a nightmare. But yeah, you can buy this thing now on iTunes. So it's like there's good stuff popping up. It's hard to tell where it is.
Yeah,
if you buy it on iTunes,
it's just very inconsistent.
For a while.
Basically, you can't rely on it, is what I'm saying. You can't trust that it's always going to be available or it ever will be available, which is a huge bummer. So Anyway, those are the movies I've been watching this week. I'm probably going to continue like kind of this Jackie Chan rewatch, but the movies I watched this week are Mr. Nice Guy and Miracles, aka Miracles, the Canton Godfather. All right, let's get to some weekly plugs. Oh, it still does that repeating thing, huh, Jeff?
Oh, yeah. Every week on DLC, man. It's the bane of my existence. Don't know how to turn it off. Makes me so angry.
All right, here we go. Back in 3, 2, 1. Weekly plugs, the part of the show each week where we plug something that we helped make or have been in. This week, I want to just give a weekly plug to one of my other podcasts, Culturally Relevant. I've been doing these things that I've been referring to as the Coronavirus Diaries, where I've been kind of chronicling what it's been like to live in Seattle, which has been an interesting city to live in, given that it was one of the places where the first reported outbreak of coronavirus happened, and we were one of the first cities to reach 70% first dose vaccination in the country, and it's just been a very interesting year to be living here, and I've been documenting it on Culturally Relevant. This week we released a new episode talking about what it's like now. If you enjoy kind of the little hangouts that we do here on the podcast, on the After Dark and stuff like that, I think you'll really enjoy Culturally Relevant, the podcast. Check it out. Lindsey, Romain, you want to tell us your weekly plug?
Yeah, mine, appropriately enough, is my review of Black Widow for Nerdist. It came up when this was a movie, embargo was up, and it is on the site now to read, and I'm sure we will dig into a lot of my thoughts, but if you care to read more, you can head over to Nerdist.
If you're like, I've heard enough, I want to read the review instead of just listening, the next 20 minutes, then check out Lindsey's Nerdist review. But you really should check it out. I'm being facetious, but you really should check it out. Devendra Hardawar, your weekly plug?
Oh, yeah. I was on this week's episode of This Week in Tech, episode 831. Do you even rocket, bro? That's a title from something I said during the show, too. So that's
wow.
fun.
You made the title.
Made the title. That's your goal, right? If you're on a show that takes quotes as titles, you want to hit that. But I was on with Christina Warren and Larry Magid, and we had great conversations about the SpaceX launch. Just lots of the latest news, a lot of different things. I always love This Week in Tech, and I was chatting with Leo Laporte, and everybody said, go check that out.
I listened to that whole episode, and you were fantastic, as usual, Devendra, and it sent me down a spiral of worrying about climate change.
Oh, is that why? So, I saw your tweet today, Jeff, and maybe don't read the book I shouted out.
Which
because
book you
it is
shout out,
depressing.
Devendra?
I also I shouted out The Ministry of the Future, the latest book by Kim Stanley Robinson, who I love, and I've read his work forever, but this book is like, God damn, he is just tired. He is just angry at everybody for not listening to his predictions about climate change and all of his fiction and everything. So it is climate apocalypse, and very realistic. Yeah.
Have you heard of The Uninhabitable Earth by David Wallace Wells?
Yep.
I started reading it, and it's like, I read like the intro basically, and I'm like, the guy drops like 500 statistics about how terrible life is going to be in the next 50 years in the first in the intro, and I'm like, I don't know if I can make it through this entire book.
The first chapter of The Ministry of the Future will gut you because it's so brutal, but it's also like you look around at everything that's happening right now, the heat wave you guys just lived through, what's happening in India and Pakistan and all over the world, but especially India is going to be it's going to be
already too late. It's already too late, and I made a terrible mistake making babies.
Yeah,
should never have brought humans into this dying earth.
And that is the theme of First Reformed, right? The movie.
Yep.
So
Yep. Jeff Kanata, your weekly plug.
What's the point, Dave? What's the point? The Dungeon Run is back this week. We had a little summer break, and it is back. Dungeon Run is my live play Dungeons and Dragons show, but it's so much more than that. It's really a storytelling, an epic fantasy story that you get to watch and participate in as a viewer as well. So much of the show is viewer interaction, and there's been huge twists of fate that have been actually controlled by the fans, by the viewers of the show. And it's something I'm really proud of. And we stopped on a cool cliffhanger. You can jump right in on any episode. Every week I write a brand new recap for everything that you need to know to jump in. So fear not that it is episode 88 or whatever we're on. Check it out on twitch.tv/thedungeonrun, Wednesday nights, 6 p.m. Pacific time. Or you can check it out on YouTube. All the episodes are archived there. Or as an audio podcast. Works great as an audio podcast. We do voices, we do sound effects and music, originally scored music every single week. We have a whole music team that scores the show live. So works great as an audio podcast as well. It's The Dungeon Run.
Those are our weekly plugs. Let's get to our review of Black Widow. All right, folks, before we get back to the Black Widow review, I actually think that any plot details are spoilers because they gave away almost nothing in the trailer, in my opinion. So I think we can say when the movie took place.
Yes.
But I don't think we should say anything about like any of the plot, and we can just say that for spoilers. Is that okay with everyone?
Yep.
That's fine.
Okay. All right. And I'll read the plot summary, which is extremely vague in my opinion. So, all right. Hold on. I'm also going to pull up Lindsey's review. Here we go. All right. That was from the trailer for Black Widow, which is streaming right now on Disney Plus via Premier Access. It's also on theaters right now. I'm going to read the plot summary from the internet. Natasha Romanoff, a.k.a. Black Widow, confronts the darker parts of her ledger when a dangerous conspiracy with ties to her past arises. End quote.
Oh man, you always want to see someone confront their ledger.
Indeed, it's a ledger that's so good. Now, before we get to the movie itself, I want to say a couple of quick things, like framing the conversation. One is that we're going to try to be as vague as possible during the review because I think the trailers gave away very, very little. They were extremely restrained about what is actually going on in this movie. I will disclose when the movie takes place, though. So if you want to go in completely fresh, you don't know anything, just skip this review until you watch the movie and then listen in. So that's kind of the stuff we're going to give away before the spoiler section. The other thing I want to mention is that this movie made around $80 million at the box office, which is the highest grossing film since Rise of Skywalker in 2019. And it also, Disney Plus, for the first time, released Premier Access streaming numbers.
Yeah, because they were like, holy shit, guys, you will not believe this.
So, and which is, it's a surprise because they don't have to do that, right? Like they could just not tell anyone, right?
It's a flex.
It makes for a much bigger number, though.
Right. Mm-hmm. So they disclosed that it's $60 million of Disney Plus now. Now, Disney Plus Premier Access is in several dozen countries around the world. And that 60 million, I believe, is a worldwide number. So I don't think they broke it down into US, as far as I can tell.
Still pretty good.
It's pretty good. So that's basically what? 2 million people paid $30 each for Premier Access, right?
Not shabby.
Not too shabby. I have a feeling that none of the other... What else did they do Premier Access for? Basically, Mulan. I have a feeling that...
Cruella?
Yeah, Cruella. Yeah. I have a feeling that Cruella and Mulan did not do as well as Black Widow because they did not announce what those numbers were, right? So I think this one is probably the strongest one. And also, they get to keep a huge portion of that $60 million, right? Whereas the $80 million that is in theaters is much smaller percentage that they get to keep. So... I surmise, I'm not sure, right, that them announcing the Premier Access is them basically saying, this is a viable business model for us, and we will probably continue to use it selectively. Mm-hmm. That's my interpretation, and I think we'll see how it plays out, but I would not be surprised to see more Premier Access in the future.
Yeah. When you're putting asses in seats, and you don't have to pay for the seats, because everybody's got them in their house, it's not too shabby.
Yeah. At the same time, though, right, the $80 million, even if a smaller portion goes to Disney, it still represents more people, right? Because 80 is higher than 60, but also average price of a ticket is lower than Premier Access, right? Yeah. So more people watched it in theaters than watched it on Premiere Access.
Well, you can't say that because who knows how many people watched for each purchase at home. I don't think you're saying more people.
Yeah, okay, you're right. Okay, more tickets, I guess, were purchased, right, than Premiere Accesses were purchased, right? Yeah.
I would venture to guess that there are larger groups of people purchasing the Premiere Access because that value proposition for a family that's all excited about Black Widow,
right? Yep.
is a better value proposition to stay home and watch it for $30. I would
guess
guess
2 kids, it's a no-brainer. Yes.
Yeah.
Rather than theaters.
Yeah. So
I would guess that there are those purchases represent more group viewings than not.
You mean not everyone in the country watches movies alone at home, Jeff?
Like
me?
Us? Yeah. No, not everybody is us.
But anyway, I just thought it's interesting that happy that the movie's doing well, happy that people are going back to theaters because we want a vibrant film, theatrical film going industry. Like that is good for society, in my opinion. It's obviously good for the podcast. And so we want that to happen. But at the same time, Premiere Access is a thing that Disney is now a tool that they can employ. And who knows if and when they're going to employ it, because as far as I know, they haven't announced that Shang-Chi is going to be Premiere Access or anything like that.
Right.
And maybe they will. Maybe they're going to be Delta variant is too powerful and we're going to go, who knows? What's
a new character, right? Like they don't know how much people will go out to see that.
Right. So who knows? But I could see it happening. We'll see. We'll continue to watch it very closely. So
it's fascinating too, because for so long, the film industry had sort of teased this idea of, maybe we'll do this kind of premiere pay-per-view model where big, day one releases will be, and it took a global pandemic for them to actually do it. Yeah. And it turns out, it worked. People like it and it can make a lot of money and it can work. So interesting.
HBO Max too, despite everything terrible that's gone on there, completely blew up the window. Now there is no window.
No real Premiere Access though for their stuff. It's just if you have
you just got to pay for HBO Max. So I remember that before this. I remember this article at TheVerge.com from 2015 entitled "This is how rich people watched Furious 7 last weekend." You remember this?
Yeah.
Before the age of Disney Premiere Access, there was this thing called Prima Cinema, and it's basically a way for the super rich to watch movies. You need to buy a $35,000 device that sits inside your house, and then I think
it's basically the thing theaters use to get digital copies.
Right. Yeah. And then the movie itself is $500 each. So you buy this $35,000 contraption, and then you pay $500 to watch the
Neo Geo of movies.
Well, I mean, maybe they're still using this thing, right? Maybe when Shang-Chi comes out, they're going to break out the Prima Cinema box.
Maybe they get it. If they get everything, depends on the availability here.
Yeah,
but
they probably can get everything. Although I have a feeling they were not super happy. The person who bought this thing, 4 weeks before the pandemic, was probably not super thrilled with that purchase.
I want somebody to be using this thing to beam it to their iPad,
to their iPhone, actually.
All right. So to the movie Black Widow. Lindsey, Romain, in your review of Black Widow, you called it one of the MCU's best standalone movies. So for you, this is top tier Marvel. Tell us more about that opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that title can you can sort of take that as you may. For me, I'm not the biggest MCU fan. I watch all the movies, I consume the movies, but I wouldn't call myself a super fan. In fact, I'm a little bit cynical sometimes of the Disney, monoculture and all of that. But, when I enter a movie like this, I try to review it as, a standalone film or, whatever film it is. I like to review it as a film and separate it from all of that. And so, for me, watching this and trying not to sort of let that cynicism in, I was just judging it based on what it was presenting to me. And on that note, I really enjoyed this film. I don't know that it's the most, it depends on, how you're coming into this, maybe how tied you are to the character and to the world at large. But for me, as somebody who is sort of, in it, but not necessarily obsessed with it. I found this to be a really enjoyable movie. I really loved the cast. I really loved the tone that it set. I felt a little different to me than a lot of the Marvel stuff, especially of late. And yeah, I had a good time with it, and I'm excited to watch it again, and I'm excited to see how it sort of ages. But for now, I really enjoyed it.
I'm glad to hear. Devendra Hardor, what do you think of Black Widow?
I'm pretty much right there. I had a ton of fun with this movie. I thought it was pretty great overall, but yeah, that last act, the final bits, it's like it cannot escape the I don't know, the vacuum, the black hole of being an MCU movie. So things do kind of fall apart there, but I think this movie starts really strong. I did not fully, like, I've seen the trailers and stuff. I didn't expect it to be full on, oh, this is The Americans meets Mission Impossible. And they even got Lauren Balfe to do the score. So it sounds like Mission Impossible 2. The action, I think, is really well staged, at least early on. Again, later on, it's
a lot of great hand-to-hand fighting in the movie.
Beautiful stuff. And shot well and edited well, and I could see what's happening. Really creative action. Like, compared to what we get in most American movies, like we were just talking about, what was it? Can't even remember the movie.
Jackie Chan movies?
No, not Jackie. No, the other. Like,
My Dinner with Andre?
Yeah, My Dinner with Andre. The hand-to-hand combat fight scene in My Dinner with Andre. No, it was an American movie where they couldn't keep the camera cuts still. Oh, Mortal Kombat.
Oh,
compared to like how Mortal Kombat did it, which was just like every half a second. Every half a second.
Dave?
Yeah.
Like 6 weeks ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Devendra. Yes, I agree with you. I don't agree that the hand-to-hand fighting is uniformly shot well, but I agree with you that it's choreographed well and it's interestingly staged.
Well, and it's also like I think you can actually see what's happening. They try to go for some of the Bourne like shaky cam stuff, and that doesn't always work. But overall, the early action is good. But then, the stuff in the finale, you get big explosions, you get big bads, and we'll talk about some stuff that happens to some major characters in this too. Like, I have questions about the like how this movie reconciles like with the morals of things people have done and kind of like how they have to pay for it in ways that just don't seem quite fair. I like Scarlett Johansson as an action star, despite her like dumb comments around like diversity in movies and stuff. And I think Florence Pugh makes a really good Scarlett Johansson 2.0 in terms of like she is good with action, she's fun, she's funny, she has a lot of energy. Everybody like brings, I think everybody's like bringing something fun to this movie. David Harbour is a ton of fun. Rachel Weisz, incredible. Ray Winstone's just there, but you know, he's Ray Winstone.
Rachel Weisz, amazing. Ray Winstone is there. He showed up.
He he had one scene. But yeah, I had fun with it. We'll talk about like what kind of what doesn't work. And there's honestly even stuff early on where I was shocked like how deep this movie was going in terms of like, oh, what are you really about? Like even the opening credit sequence, there's it's evoking human trafficking. It's evoking things that women are facing all around the world. And I think like it kind of, even just the narrative within that sequence, and we'll talk about what happens in the first sequence in spoilers, but even just that like kind of got me. Like this movie has a point of view and it really knows what it's trying to say, and it, you know, really touches on that several times throughout, and then it just ends in a big explosion because it's a Marvel movie.
Jeff Kanata, your thoughts on Black Widow?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say my thoughts on Black Widow are best summed up in the form of a limerick.
Exciting. All right.
Though I didn't see it projected, it's so funny and well directed. I was thoroughly engrossed, and what I like most is it's different than what I expected.
Interesting. That's an intriguing, that asks a question, Jeff, which is how was it different? Right?
I would have told you that I could have predicted exactly how this movie would unfold.
Yes.
Before I saw it.
Yeah.
Knowing what the MCU does, like you could like plot out what this movie would be. Yeah.
Yes. And knowing the trope of the Russian super agent that is converted to, you know, the American side, and like we've seen that movie a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And I thought we were going to get the MCU's version of it, and I thought I would enjoy the scale and spectacle that MCU brings to stuff. And I love Scarlett Johansson, and I like these characters, and I thought I would have fun with it. but I thought it would be a very conventional sort of origin story thing. And what this movie actually is so much more interesting than that, has so much more life and personality and fun. It is hilarious and has a really, as Lindsey was saying, a wonderful tone to it that was completely unpredicted by me. Yeah. I did not see that coming at all, and was delighted by it. I totally agree with Lindsey and Devindra that Lindsey said in her review, one of the best standalone Marvel movies. I think it is. Mm-hmm. I absolutely think it is. It is so great from top to bottom. I know you guys were saying some stuff about the end. I don't have those problems. I'm a Marvel zombie from way back. I dig all that stuff. I love the overlap. I love seeing like obscure characters from a movie over here and a movie over there popping up and playing a role. It feels very much like comic books. Like, oh, we have a general that we can use. Let's just throw him in there.
An Oscar-winning actor playing a general. Let's just throw him in. Throw him in. It's fine. 5 minutes.
So amazing. And I will go even farther than you did, Devindra, in talking about Florence Pugh, because she is fantastic in this movie. So dry and the delivery is so perfect and such a great foil for Scarlett Johansson in a number of scenes. Like there's some just wonderful, like sitting across the table with each other scenes that sing, that are lovely, that really work. And there's a lot of action in this movie. Almost all of it is great, not just good, but great. So much of the movie is told through action. There are a number of great, I was sitting there thinking about this movie and going, there are people, maybe one on this podcast, that thinks that F9 is a better experience than this. Like, there's not a single action sequence in F9, in my opinion, that holds a candle to even the first action sequence in this movie. It's like not even in the same ballpark as quality, inventiveness, fun, realism, like all of the things I look for in a great action sequence, Black Widow brings to the table. It's so good. It's so much better than I expected this movie to be. It is really top tier MCU in my opinion, and I was happy to spend the $30 to watch it at home. I thought I got my money's worth. It was great.
Wow, man. I mean, I don't know about that comparison.
Here we go. Here we go, everybody.
Well, no. First of all, let me just say I really enjoyed the movie. Like I like the movie. It's just more like the part about
your old
Jeff
man
saying,
is just like really setting us up here.
The part about Jeff saying that like every action scene in this movie is better than Fast 9. Like there is stuff in this movie that is arguably more preposterous than what is in F9, which is a high bar to reach. So that's the only thing I take issue with.
But way more fun and not as laughable. Like it's preposterous, but you're in a comic book movie and not in a
different.
I mean, yeah, I disagree.
Yeah.
Categorically.
Let's not have this fight, Jeff.
Yeah,
let's talk about the happy movie that's making us all that we all like right now.
But I really enjoyed the movie. I think what's great about the movie. So I will say when the movie takes place. Okay, so if you think I already warned you about that, but the movie takes place after the events of Civil War. And before
my wife had no idea what was happening.
Right, and before Infinity War. And I don't think it's actually very clear that that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it obviously is clear because she has one color hair and she looks at the dye of another color hair, which she has later in another film. And so obviously it places you between those two colors of her hair.
It's so true. It's so true. Thank you for that, Jeff. But yeah, I think that it takes place after Civil War. And let's just acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is that if this movie had come out before Avengers Endgame, I think it would have made... First of all, it would have actually made Avengers Endgame more awesome. More meaningful. Because I think, Disney Plus did a promotion when they launched Black Widow, and they're like, here is the Black Widow collection, right? And you swipe through the carousel, and it's like every single movie, it shows like Black Widow in that movie, right? So it's like Iron Man 2 and Captain America, Winter Soldier, and all these movies. And I'm sitting there scrolling through these things, and I'm like, man, we learn very little about this character in most of these movies, right? Like some of them we learn a little bit more, but like we learn glancingly little about this character, and it just would have meant so much to have this movie come out before Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, she was always just like the support for all the big guys,
right?
You know, and
right.
like there's the whole Age of Ultron thing too. We'll talk about this stuff in spoilers, but there's a quote from Age of Ultron which I think sent shockwaves through the internet just because it used something that happened to her as basically character work for the Hulk in a way.
Right, exactly. And so this character has in some ways been done a disservice to, basically, in the MCU. And so to have this movie that it's not actually an origin story. It actually
it's somebody else's origin story.
And it provides more context to who she is. I thought is very meaningful, and it's just so weird that it's coming out now, because
it's so weird.
It was gonna come out after Endgame to begin with, and now it's like, we've already seen Falcon, Winter Soldier, and Loki, and WandaVision already, and it's like this just feels like another thing to the pile, as opposed to like, oh, this really gives more depth to this character who honestly really deserved it before the events of Endgame. And also, let me just point out, I think she gets shafted in Endgame as well.
Yes, 100%.
Because of the
wrong Avenger died. How about that?
Wrong kid died in Avengers Endgame, but also the ending of Avengers Endgame, which I'm not going to spoil if you haven't seen Avengers Endgame. But like they have this big funeral for Tony Stark, and it's like, oh, Natasha Romanoff, who? Natasha who?
She's her body's just on an alien planet somewhere.
And even more than that, also spoiling end of Endgame, but there's that big sort of battle at the end, and it's all the women coming together. There's like that kind of cheap moment where it like focuses on all the women, and she's not a part of that. It's
we should hear her like Jedi voice in the Force or something. Yeah.
So anyway, I really enjoy this movie. I think it's great because of how low stakes it is, which is to say. Yes, it's not no stakes. There's like the fate of Earth, Earth's geopolitics is at stake in some ways, but it's not the universe is at stake, right? And I enjoyed it because they have more time to focus on Black Widow's relationships with her family unit and things of that nature, and I think that's to the film's credit. And you guys have already talked about all the other stuff, so I had a good time with it, and I think the fact that it's self-contained and low stakes is a feature, not a bug. So those are my thoughts. Why don't we get to spoilers for Black Widow starting right now?
Now you're looking for the secret.
You're going to see this coming.
No. But you won't find it because, of course,
you're not going to see this coming.
You're not really looking.
I have been puzzling over how it works.
You don't really want to work it out.
Who's in the box?
I have been dying to tell you.
I want to tell you my secret now.
You want to be fooled.
All right, spoilers for Black Widow starting right now. So, Demira, you had commented on the opening credits, and I agree with you that this movie walks a very fine line in tone, right? It's dealing with incredibly dark subject matter. Child trafficking, forced sterilization, and it manages to do it with a lot of humor. Like, it manages to treat these things seriously, but also like kind of do them lightheartedly, and I thought the tone really worked. I wouldn't necessarily take my kids to go see this movie, not that I have any, but I thought that the tone worked really well. Lindsey, Romain, what do you think of the tone and how it balanced all these different subject matters?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about that a little bit, but that was the most surprising thing for me. I think, and you get that sense, right, as soon as it opens, there's this big flashback sequence where you kind of open with Natasha as a child, and seeing her undercover. And just from that moment, honestly, just from like seeing the way that it was filmed and the shots and everything, the way that it came together, it felt immediately very different to me. And I think, Devinder, you mentioned the Americans. That stood out to me right away.
Absolutely.
Even the opening sequence too, where it kind of plays the Nirvana song at the cover, and you're seeing this sort of flashback. It really reminded me of the Americans there. But just the sense of like character work that goes into it from the beginning. It really it stood out to me, and I felt like it carried through all the way through. Sometimes you can have those sort of fancy flashbacks and then the tone is dropped or it changes or whatever. But I felt like that really established what this movie was going to be.
It's kind of a masterwork, honestly. Like that whole opening scene, like you see it's idyllic summer world, kids and bikes, kids.
Hello?
A traditional family.
Oh, sorry. Can you repeat that again, Devinder? You cut out for a second.
Okay.
He didn't for me.
Oh, that was
Okay.
weird. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
I'll just do that big.
Yep.
So I think the first scene of this movie is basically kind of a masterwork, right? Because you get so much so quickly. You get the kids in an idyllic, like suburban life. You have like the mom who loves her. It's like a nice home. The dad comes and something's up, and immediately things shift on a dime, and things get really dangerous. And there's so many things that happen. Like once once the whole action set piece ends and they get to Cuba, David Harbour's character is just like, fuck these people.
Total dick. Yeah.
Total dick. It's like, and the kids are just stolen away. And I don't know, that just really
Very hard.
got me.
Yeah.
It was incredibly rough. And then the whole opening sequence is they're going to be living a life of human trafficking. They're going to be taught to be killers. Who knows what else they're going to be doing in spy school, because we know spy school always involves really gross sex shit. It's gross. It is like, it's bad what these girls are going through. And it's like, this is in a Marvel movie. It felt really dark.
When Florence Pugh like reflects on like how she murdered the woman that set her free, I'm like, wow, I'm gonna be lying awake thinking about that now. Thank you.
And that scene is so good too, because you're like, okay, what's happening here? They're fighting. Oh, that's interesting, and that's our immediate introduction to her character too. I thought was really smart.
Yeah, Lindsey, you mentioned the Americans. I thought the movie actually kind of leverages the Americans and allows them to sort of shorthand that whole situation. It's like,
you get it.
Everybody knows. Everybody, we sort of all understand what they don't have to explain that they've been undercover and that they've lived this false life. It's like we had a whole TV series unrelated, but you all
it was also reality. That was a real thing. We've been discovering. So
but I feel like if the Americans had never existed, there would have been a little more heavy lifting that needed to happen there.
If there wasn't the Americans or Salt.
Salt,
the Angelina Jolie hit action movie,
well, that intro also kind of establishes something that I also think is a really cool thing in this movie that separates it a little bit from other Marvel stuff, which is that it shows us this family, this quote unquote found family, but it's a complicated found family. It's not a family where they've come together, and I know all of them are a little bit complicated, but there's darker stuff here that reverberates through the rest of the film and through their relationships, that I think just makes it. It gives it this sort of darker tone that, it feels like nothing that I've seen in the MCU.
It reminded
before.
me a little bit. People think this is ridiculous, but it reminded me a little bit of the Hirokazu Koreeda movie Shoplifters, which is also.
I want to see where this goes. Yeah,
well, the movie is also kind of about a found family that is in some ways dysfunctional, but there's something valuable about that connection.
I love that movie.
So I just had a shoplifter's tingle. That's all I'm saying.
It's a good tingle. It's a good tingle. I want to rewatch Shoplifters, but we're talking about like how dark the opening is, and then like on a dime, it can get really fun and funny. Like I think Florence Pugh's like mocking of the Black Widow 3-point fall is perfect.
Yes,
just
very good, very
incredible.
I just would never have guessed that the Black Widow standalone movie would have so much humor and embrace it so much. It never felt like part of her character, and I love it. I love that the David Harbour character is such a delight and such a wonderful comedic moments throughout the whole movie, and
he is so good. And watching him after seeing him in No Sudden Move too in this movie, it's like
back to
huge
back.
range. You know what I mean? Like
incredible. He's amazing.
In No Sudden Move, I'm like, oh, this is the guy I typically expect David Harbour to play, right? In No Sudden Move. But then watching him in this, I'm like, wow, man, he can really go for it.
Between this and Hellboy, this guy can do anything. But he's also a good dad actor. I think like we see him as dad. I think we all started to love him as Eleven's dad on Stranger Things. So it's like that's kind of like the thing I see here. This is him as a very bad dad. Yeah. And I like how complex it is in a way, because like all the family stuff just works so well. Like once the Yelena and Natasha meet up with him and they have that plane ride, and he is just like, he is completely oblivious to the entire mess of it. But that dinner sequence, which is perfect, and then bringing in Rachel Weisz's character, having that family talk and talking it out, was that hit really deeply. And again, I was surprised by how much that deeply when Florence Pugh's talked about like it was real for me. I did not expect that to actually move me in a way, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree with you that like all the family stuff is the best stuff, which is a shame. Which is why it's a shame that like the final 20 minutes of the movie is kind of this ridiculous, over the top action sequence. And this is where Jeff's comments really get my goat about like, I mean, okay, you can't kill Ray Winstone because if you're smelling his pheromones,
which we're going to introduce in
and
that
so
scene.
The solution is not just hold your breath or stand like far away from him, but
plug your nose,
smash your nose. You have to sever the nerve. Which, by the way, you can just that's how it works. You sever the nerve by smashing your head against the table.
Sweep the leg, sever the nerve. Yeah.
And then when you want to fix it, you just twist the nose back in place, and you're all good. You're all good.
Yeah, that was really silly.
I mean, that's a cool action guy fixing your broken nose.
Let's be fair, though. I don't think she was fixing the nerve in her nose when she put it back in place. I think.
Oh, so you think that from this point forward she can't smell anymore?
Yeah, and maybe ultimately that's what caused her death, Dave.
We never know.
If she could only have smelled.
All right.
All right. But hey, we're talking about the big action sequence, right? And if you're going to have a big action sequence at the end, how about where's our hero moment for Alexei? Where's our hero moment really for Melina, which she has like a short one, but it's just all kind of a mess at the end. And Rachel Weisz's character should have died. She should have. What did this woman do? Right. For decades, she's been helping to run this entire system throughout the world, using these girls, mind controlling them. I think she may have had some of the like programming that Natasha had, but she clearly was aware of what she was doing. She had her own actions. She needed to atone for what was happening. And the end of this movie, she's like, "Peace, guys. I'm glad I lived. Love you, daughters."
What is hilarious about the end of this movie is, I was watching it with my wife, and here's the thing. You know that the events of this movie can't have that far-reaching impact.
Right.
Because if they had, we would have learned about them in Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, right? So it's like, that like it's going to be relatively self-contained, and literally everyone in the movie piles into a ship at the end and then flies away, and my wife was like, "Yep, there goes the whole plot of the movie. Flying away in that little plane, so we don't need to deal with it anymore for the rest of the MCU." I thought that was kind of funny. That just like, it's all completely self-contained, as encapsulated physically, literally in this plane that's flying away.
Melina flew off to her home planet. And we never talked to her again.
Yeah. So.
No, but that's. I mean, I completely agree with that. I do think the end kind of falls apart, and it gets a little bit silly. And yeah, it's sort of at the detriment because we know that it has to go a certain way because of Endgame. But the fact that the actual like larger overarching thing was really personal and tied to her is what I really liked about it, and which is why when we were talking about why I called it like one of the best standalones, that's sort of what I meant by that, is that it feels the most reflective of the character, like the larger thing going on. And I know that's true in all of them, but this was the one that I think just really even the sort of male pheromone thing is so silly, but that's so creepy in such a very specific like woman way. Like it's hard to even put words to, but like
it's a movie that's all about control, right?
Yeah,
like in a very specific way. And I do love she gets the dig like, "Man, you weren't even smart enough to break my nose." Just like little things like that are kind of fun. But man, they could have done so much more. I feel like we should have seen that character before.
Yeah.
I think you can't just like introduce him and then have the big action sequence. Let's talk about what happened to Taskmaster.
Yeah, I was going to say two things I want to discuss before we wrap up. One is Taskmaster, which apparently is greatly changed from the comics.
Yeah, for sure. But in an awesome way, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, in the movie, Taskmaster is Ray Winstone's character's daughter, played by Olga Kurilenko. Could not have predicted that was going to be the face behind that mask when she took that thing off.
Also, the only Russian in this movie, right? Who doesn't say a word.
Well, I had, the only actual Russian. Yeah, it's very funny. I had that moment when the mask was coming off. I was like, there's no one, we don't know anyone else in this movie. Like, who could this reveal possibly be? I was like, is this going to be Clint Barton behind
I think you saw the opening credits. It's like, okay, she's a big enough name. She's been a Bond girl. She's been in things, but
Max Payne, right? Yeah.
Max Payne. Who could forget?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, Jeff, how did you feel about you think that this character was an improvement over the comics, basically, right?
Well, I think it was an improvement because of how it fit well into this film. Like, I'm not pedantic enough to say it needs to be like the comics just because it was that way in the comics. Like, use the character. It worked out really cool. I thought it was awesome. I thought the first fight between Black Widow and the Taskmaster was awesome. I think immediately we get that the Taskmaster has all of the Avengers moves, has Captain America's moves and Hawkeye's moves, and like that's awesome. That the movie didn't even really have to explain that to us. We just get it because it's using the shield the way Cap uses a shield, and I just thought that all of that, it was awesome. And Taskmaster versus Natasha is, a very classic matchup, and it paid off in a really cool way. And I liked that they twisted it, turned it on its head, and it was a surprise to me when that helmet came off, and I was like, that's kind of rad. And I dig that it was, it was a woman under there, and it kind of reinforced that this is very much a woman's movie and about that experience. I just thought that was a cool way to take a character and reimagine it for a different medium.
I was just thinking throughout this movie, though, that when Natasha has that story about, I had to sacrifice this young girl to get to the big bad, I was wondering, like, would this movie actually let her get away with that? Would you have an Avenger be a child murderer?
That is a brutal scene, because there is a scene that is almost identical to that scene in the Steven Spielberg movie Munich.
Yes.
You guys remember that?
Yes.
That's right.
And the assassins in Munich are like,
haunts them.
We are not going to kill this young girl in the furtherance of our assassination. And those guys are like pretty cold-blooded. Like they're not they're there to execute a bunch of people, right? Like that is their goal in that movie. And I'm like, Black Widow is like a worse person than the assassins in Munich. That was kind of my reaction to that
She's
scene.
not good. Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, I think it's supposed to have a mirroring to the young women that he has destroyed their lives, and it's supposed to. I think she's supposed to come to terms with the fact that she became kind of like him, and I think that's kind of the point.
Yeah,
maybe it's not. It does not give him the gravitas
right.
of a Munich.
But
we're not in that movie,
Yeah, I agree that the kind of purpose of the movie is like she kind of gets some redemption. Like both her and Florence Pugh are getting some redemption for their past crimes by like freeing all these remaining girls. Like I get that that's like kind of the thematic arc of the movie. I don't know that it fully lands this like I've done horrible things and like I need to atone for that. Like I don't know that that emotional beat landed for me. Lindsey, Romain, any thoughts on this? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, for me it kind of worked because one of the her memorable lines, I believe, in the first Avengers is when she talks about the red on her ledger, which comes up again here, and you get the sense that she has this like deep shame for something that has happened and that she's trying to atone from it, like from the beginning. So I do think that to me sort of paid off. You actually get a sense of what that was, and
that's a great point.
Yeah, and that's sort of been this hidden dark thing that she's carried with her this whole time that she's always hinted at in other people's movies, and here it gets to be sort of played out and tease at maybe other things that she's had to do that she really regrets. So to me that worked.
Well, it's a good thing that Olga Kurylenko was transformed into a killing machine, because now she can kill her guilt-free in this movie. Yes. So,
they save her.
I know. Yeah, I'm being facetious. I'm being facetious. All right. Well, let's talk about the ending, which is that apparently this was supposed to be the first time we were introduced to Valentina Contessa de la Fontaine, or whatever her name is, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus. This movie again was supposed to come out in May of 2020. So my guess, which I have no basis for, what's in reality, is that this scene was going to be like longer and more drawn out, like the scene in which we actually met her in Falcon and Winter Soldier. But because Falcon and Winter Soldier came out first, they're like, let's put the longer intro in that scene. That's my guess as to what happened.
I mean, the Sam Jackson intro in Iron Man was not long.
No, not
at
all.
Boom. Yeah, you know who I am. Shit's about to get real. Cut to black.
Well, that's. I mean, what I'm saying is that his intro in that movie was probably about as ceremonial as her intro in Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then in this movie she gets basically no intro at all, is what I'm trying to say. So she's just there, and it's like, hey, I'm Valentina, and it's like, oh, okay.
She'd probably have like one more line saying like, I'm putting together a team.
Right, exactly.
And she just uses that line.
My guess is that like I just can't imagine this, like in this form, this would have been the first introduction to the character. Maybe it would have been. I don't know. But what it teases is that Florence Pugh's character is going to return and apparently trying to kill Hawkeye, which, by the way, I am all for. I think that character does not need to exist anymore.
Good God.
Well, we're getting a Hawkeye
kill
series, right?
Yeah.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
a series coming this year, so we'll see her again soon.
The wrong kid died, is what I'm trying to say. Wrong kid died in Avengers Endgame. So
Exactly.
yeah. All right. Any other thoughts? Or shall we wrap it up there? If so, I think,
fun movie.
Yeah,
How about
fun
that?
movie. We had a
real
good time.
fun.
Okay. So I think for like me, it's like top tier Marvel, top third, maybe top quartile.
Yeah.
It sounds like that it's the case for Lindsey Romain as well.
Yeah.
Maybe Divinger, but I'm curious,
I'd say
Jeff.
top third.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where does it rank for you, Jeff?
Oh, absolutely. No, it's top tier Marvel for sure. It is way better than I anticipated it being, and I had a great time with it. I think it stands alone and it fits in also, and I think it's definitely top third Marvel movie. Very, very good.
I'll say
Loved
for
it.
me, I watched a screener for it, and as soon as it was over, like I kept thinking about it, and I watched it again, which very
Wow.
rarely
Huh.
that
Yeah,
very rarely
yeah.
happens with me. In fact, I don't think I've seen any of the other Marvel, maybe a couple of them more than once, but yeah, that one I just immediately wanted to rewatch, and I don't usually get that feeling from these types of movies. So it really worked. For me.
And I'm not going to compare it to anything else. I will
Yeah.
just say, I love that the Marvel Universe or Kevin Feige's stewardship of these properties allows for something to be dark and entertaining and have these very mature themes, this assassin storyline, and be fun and goofy and funny and silly and be able to juggle those two things and not be afraid to be funny and have fun moments and understand that those things can coexist and understand that the one makes the other better and vice versa. And it makes me so happy that is the tone of these movies, that even this movie, even Black Widow, which I did not expect at all to be as funny and as as silly and as irreverent as it is, it has the courage to be that. I dig that so much.
Mhm.
Yeah, it makes me curious too, since this one was so successful, if they'll go back and sort of insert, characters into past timelines. I don't know that would work with anybody else, but I don't know. I just thought that was a unique sort of way to tell this story too, is, just stick it into a time when we wouldn't necessarily expect. And I thought that was kind of cool.
Alrighty. Well, that's going to bring us to the end of our review of Black Widow. You can find more episodes of this podcast at thefilmcast.com. You can email us still, for now, at /filmcast@gmail.com. Guys, it does occur to me that at the end of the day, it's extremely impressive that Kate Shortland made a movie. The theme song for this episode was written by adamwarrock.bandcamp.com. You can find his music there. Noah Ross is responsible for our weekly plugs music. Our spoiler bumper was by Kyle Corwith, and this episode was edited by me, David Chen. Lindsey Romain, thanks so much for joining us. Where do you tell people about where to find you these days?
Yeah, you can find my work at Nerdist still. I still contribute a little bit over there, and maybe elsewhere in the future. And you can go back and read all my stuff at Nerdist, and I've written for Film Vulture, many places. So just Google my name.
It's been such a delight to have you on, and we're really grateful that you could join us today, Lindsey, for this momentous episode. So
Thank you
so
much for having me. That really means a lot that I got to be here for that.
Thank you.
Next week, we will be discussing A Quiet Place Part 2, which is going to be on Paramount Plus by the time you're listening to this. And for the After Dark this week, we got some Tomorrow War spoilers, as well as some other fun surprises. So you can access that and support the show at patreon.com/filmpodcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you later. People in the chat, thanks so much for your involvement as well. We really appreciate it. I was seeing some of these comments. I should have called out some of these corrections that you guys made. I appreciate it.
How many things did we get wrong?
Oh yeah, I didn't look at.
Just the episode. First of all, I called it Sydney. It's actually Melbourne, Australia.
Yep.
And also, Who Am I is the name of the movie that you were talking about, Jeff. The Jackie Chan sliding down a building or whatever.
Yeah.
So thanks for that. I really wanted to bring it up, but by the time I saw it, it was past, so it's my fault. It's hard to run a recording, like 3 simultaneous recordings, and also look at the chat. But appreciate you guys showing up. We're now going to go off the air for the After Dark. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.